Hello and welcome to my first MMA video. Today I'm doing a tier list on UFC or MMA fighters that have done DMT or other psychedelics like mushrooms. I'm giving out rankings based off what they have accomplished up to this moment in time, the kind of trip they had, or how they're using said substances. First off, I'm going to put Teren McKinny down at D tier. Subpar fighter and subpar trip experience. Never going to touch a title, rightfully knocked out by Drew Dober after he threatened to dog Guru. He couldn't even take on a bunch of imaginary demons that weren't really even there. Then he lost a handicap match to a bunch of pigs wearing body cams. The pigs wearing body cams, he was not hallucinating. So now we'll move him down to D tier. Scale down him getting knocked out. And on to the next entry. Second, we'll go with Luke Rockhold at B tier. He would be lower, but he brought up using mushrooms in the build-up to his fight with Paulo Costa. While it was a bad performance on both of their ends, on a surprising note, Luke said he does it around 4 times a week. Being a former UFC and Strikeforce champion puts him a bit higher on the list too. He has accomplished more than Teren McKinny will. Need to scale down this photo of him getting knocked out. Now I need to scale it up. And moving on. Third, we have Rashad Evans. I'll put him at C tier because he was a champion very briefly and was able to make a small comeback, getting a win at Eagle FC MMA in 2022. I want to put him lower because of his vegan lifestyle and diet. But getting a win at age 43 while being on that demonic diet deserves a bit of credit. So we'll take this photo of him, scale it down, and we'll go to the next one. Fourth, Kevin Holland. C tier again. Never gonna be champ, took a bunch of drugs and convinced himself he was Superman. A tale as old as time. But at least he realized it. I like that he snapped at the bad MMA reporters too though. They deserve it more. His trash talk has gotten more annoying than funny as well. No good wins, was never good. So we'll take this photo of him, looking all sad on the bench. And then we'll move on to the next. Fifth, I'm putting Nick and Nate Diaz together at A tier because they're basically the same person. Nick's Strikeforce title gets them to that A tier status. Being brain dead potheads carries them a bit to the top as well. But they will never reach S tier because of their soy and vegan diets. You will always be docked a point for this type of behavior. I'll give Nate a point for almost knocking out that Logan Paul impersonator on the street too. So we'll take this photo of Nick and Nate looking gangster, scale it down, and next entry. A tier we have Jake Shields. Awesome as hell on Twitter, as gay as that sounds. He booted up Minecraft and attacked Mike Jackson with his diamond pickaxe, which I commend. Too bad he did an awkward BJJ crawl while he was doing it. BJJ is the most non-intimidating martial art there is. He has a vegan diet too, so I cannot give him S tier. He's willing to call anyone out for anything he dislikes or thinks is wrong. He's even told a fan on Twitter they need MDMA. So we'll move him to A tier now, next to Nick and Nate Diaz. And now we'll move on to the next entry. I'm putting Cheeto Ver at S tier, champ potential. Called Sean O'Malley homophobic slurs during a press conference, cool tattoos, somehow able to change his identity with every haircut. I hope he was able to figure out how to actually get good at fighting, so he can become champ and call Sean O'Malley even more slurs, as well as take care of his family in based Ecuador. So we'll move him up to S tier real quick. And now we can move on with the list. Honorable mention is Ian Gary, E tier. I'm convinced he took something that made him think it was a great idea to be in this love triangle with a 50-year-old woman and her ex. He took his wife's name, turned vegan as well. Don't go vegan, or invite yourself to other gyms and tell others how to fight. And please tell your wife not to film other fighters in the shower naked. It's very weird. We'll get him down to E tier real quick. And now we can move on with the list. Sean O'Malley, B tier. Mid to high ranking because he's a champ with a cool fighting style. I disagree with some of the lifestyle choices though. I think the cucking is a bit much. Same with the over-the-top weed smoking. Seems like he's trying to push that on his audience, which is clearly very young. Thankfully he seems to have put an end to the cucking side of things. Hopefully we see other mature changes with the cool psychedelic use. We'll make his portrait smaller, get him next to Luke, under Nick, and then we'll move on. Diego Sanchez, down at F tier. Getting exploded by a homoerotic New Zealander with a ponytail, I just can't give you any cool points. His career has taken a very unfortunate downturn, but you can't embrace veganism and other soy ideology like that. It's just what happens naturally when you do. He used to let Joshua Fabia punch him around, slap him around, and violate him on OnlyFans, among other disgusting things. Once I move him down to F tier, we'll move on with the list. There we go. Moving on. Darkside Henry Cejudo at C tier. He was a champ, but his career isn't as good as people make it out to be. He beat a drained TJ Dillashaw that was near death to make flyweight. Marlon Moraes is nothing compared to what he used to be, getting leg kick KO'd in a C tier promotion called PFL. Beating Dominic Cruz on short notice and getting an early stoppage from all-nonsense Keith Peterson. Then he sat out for 2 years like a spaz, overvaluing himself. Then he got a loss against Aljo in a boring fight. Now he's back to e-begging on YouTube and trying to milk his fans for all the pocket change they have. I didn't believe Sean O'Malley saying Cejudo needed money until I tuned into Cejudo's live streams. I suggest you do the same, but be careful what you give out. You'll see why. And we'll get him down to C tier quickly so we can move on. 11. Justin Gaethje. A tier because he believes in a higher power. He talked about his DMT experience on the Nelk Boys podcast, and there's a good chance he can be UFC champ now. I wanted to put him at S tier for this video, but then I remembered he put on a dress for a fantasy football party, so I docked a point. Cheeto gets a pass for that weird bathroom video because I'm pretty sure that was Ian Gary's harpy of a wife. So I'll take Justin and put him up here next to Jake Shields. Moving on. Dan Hardy, C tier. Decent YouTube channel, well-spoken guy, bad politics. Over-analytical to a fault. It's reflected in his MMA picks. Normally psychedelics result in ego death, but for Dan it seems to have made his worse. He has the setup of a child too. All the plastic toys and trinkets, a bit much for me. He did bag Veronica though, so good for him. And we'll put him up to C tier now, next to Cejudo. Moving on. 13. Israel Adesanya. I'll put him at B tier. Weird as hell, unbelievably weird, but a great fighter and was able to reign at the top of middleweight for a long time, while being very active. Not the most exciting, but he was the most effective. Gets ranked a bit higher for his ability as a fighter. Will never be A tier or above because of how the psychs have altered his brain. All the weird anime and dog fetishes, insane to comprehend. So we'll put him at B tier. And now we can move on. Brendan Schaub, easy S tier, without question. Incredible fighter, even better comedian. Great taste in trucks and subpar female comics, because they're all subpar. Teaming up with 50-year-old divorced Brian Callen to bully tiny Bobby Lee as alpha. I don't care what anyone says. Schaub has never been untruthful about anything and has worked for everything he has. Anyone that disagrees with this is verifiably retarded. We'll get Schaub up to S tier where he belongs. See you in the next entry. 15. TJ Dillashaw Killishaw. Good champion, fun fighter, CEO of EPO. Was not ashamed of using PEDs at all. Pretty based. A tier. Funny dude. Seems like he'd be a great dad outside of his cheating and sanctioned sports. Literally did nothing wrong during the Uriah Faber beef, by the way. Literally all he did was get some striking training elsewhere, outside of injuring training partners. Yes, bad. But people switch gyms and trainers all the time, which Cody Garbrandt eventually did when he went on a skid. So we'll take TJ. Where did I say he was? A tier. Move him up to A tier. Next to Gaethje. Moving on. Alex Caceres, 16. C tier. Cool nickname and fighting style gets him C tier ranking. The veganism and other nerd behavior gets him nerfed a few points. I can't respect eating tofu over meat. Never have, never will. Won't ever be champ either. Too old and busted at this point. Seems like a cool dude, but seeing the word veganism makes me angry as I made this video, so we're gonna move on. Move him to C tier real quick. And there we go. 17. Cain Velasquez. The famous Cain Velasquez. I'll put him at B tier for becoming a UFC heavyweight champion, even when it was at a time when they weren't very skilled. He did beat up Brock Lesnar in hilarious fashion though. He turned to psychedelics to deal with the loss of his mother and brother, and sadly things got worse from as the years went on. Going Cain Wick down a highway with a bunch of civilians gets you dinged a point or two though. Either get the guy outside his place quietly or don't do it at all. So we'll take Cain and put him at B tier. And next entry. 19. Cerrone. I'll put him into A tier because he seems like a cool dude overall. He talked about doing mushrooms during a marijuana convention. He gets a high ranking for being an exciting fighter too. No S tier because he always came up short on his title shots or contention fights. Probably hurts his soul to see how his sponsor Anheuser-Busch went with the Dylan Mulvaney situation. So we'll take Cerrone, make him small next to Dillashaw. Next entry. Number 20 in our final entry, Mike Tyson. Not an MMA or UFC fighter, but he's probably the most famous fighter for this type of thing. I'll go ahead and put him at B tier former heavyweight boxing champion, used to do a bunch of horrible and irredeemable things. Thankfully, seems to have turned his life and attitude around, becoming a much better person. I'm dinging a point off for him sounding like an inaudible retard, and I'm going to take a point for letting some weird vape company use his image and pushing those products. Vaping is retarded and pointless. So we'll take Tyson, put him up at B tier next to Cain. And that was our final entry for the video, you guys. Thank you. Thank you so much if you made it to the end. Please subscribe. I go live almost every day, and I plan on making more videos. Hope you all have a good one.